Thank y'all for coming out. Thank you so much for coming to Code and Trust. This is a really, really cool series that Tori has been spearheading here. She's been getting these AI designers here to show us how to vibe code, show us how Code and Trust is vibe coding, some of the cool tools that are being used, and how you all can use vibe coding to build things yourself. In the next hour, Tori and Lou are going to build a program from nothing. They're going to show us the tools that they use. And at the end of this event, if y'all haven't signed in at the front and given your email, make sure you do, because you're going to get the plans to build this so you can follow along at home and do the same. Now tonight, we're building something fun, right? We're building a game, but this can easily be changed to build reports, to help you keep a list of leads or clients, to do any number of things. At the end, Lou Vega, our cybersecurity expert, is going to show us a cool tool that he built to help you make sure that your vibe code is safe from threats. This is part of the regular series that we do here at Code and Trust. If this is the first time in the building, who has never been to one of these at Code and Trust? Raise your hand. Hey, let's give them a round of applause. Thank you guys for coming here. We love building things here at Code and Trust. Y'all should see the stuff this team builds every day. It's amazing. If this is your first time, come on back. They are passionate about building. They're passionate about solving problems with tech. And we're all going to learn a little bit more tonight. So now I'm going to turn it over to Tori. Tori, thank you so much.
Thank you, Matt. Hi, guys, and thank you everyone so much for coming out. We really appreciate it. My name's Victoria. I'm one of the lead UX designers here at Code and Trust. At Code and Trust, we are your strategists, product designers, and engineers, and we're your trusted partners in tech, and we're so happy to have you here. So for tonight, we're going to be going through a quick strategic overview that you can apply to any vibe-coded app. We will also be building a vintage-style Mortal Kombat game. I don't know if any of you guys remember that. I used to play that with my little brothers all the time. And we'll also include some characters from the TV show The Office in it to make it fun. It will be Jim versus Dwight. I think that starting with something fun is the best way to learn, as it encourages you to want to keep going, keeps the stakes low. So we will be recording this. Thank you, Matt. And tomorrow we will also be posting all of the assets on LinkedIn as well, where if you drop your email, we'll send them out to you as well, so you can follow along at home. Scale of 1 to 5 spicy chili peppers. This is maybe a 3 spicy chili peppers. So hopefully everyone will learn something tonight and will come away feeling empowered to try it on their own. And I will say I'm not an engineer, thank God for myself and for everyone who would work with me. So really any of you can take these skills and do them at home. All right, so for what the heck is vibe coding? Lou, would you like to talk a little bit about vibe coding and how different apps that you might build or tools that you might use could impact security?
Sure, vibe coding is basically building apps without a development team, but rather through prompts. So you got an AI agent, AI program, and you're explaining in plain English through the prompts how you want to build this app to do whatever it is that you're wanting it to do. And so Tori's going to show that. Yeah.
So yes, totally correct. It's a shift from having to write the code to having to only describe your vision. So you bring the vibes and AI will bring the code, and I know that all of you here tonight have the vibes, so we're already off to a good start. Let's start by talking about the different ways you can vibe code, especially if you're new to this. So I think the quickest, most obvious, and easiest way anyone can get started is with your LLM of choice. So it might be Gemini, that might be ChatGPT, it can be anything. So you can very easily say, here for Gemini, we're using a canvas, and I'm going to put the thinking to fast for everything tonight so you guys don't have to deal with any lagging wait times. Maybe I want to create a calorie tracking app. Okay, great. So we love this example here because on the left you can see one simple sentence was written, and now we've got all this code that, thank God, I did not have to write myself. And very soon we will see our app experience. Speaking of different tools that you can use for vibe coding, there is a lot of them, which we will touch on right after this. So here we can see with one sentence, we have this little functionality. Again, we didn't really include too many details, so it will kind of build whatever it thinks is best, and then you can add additional prompts to refine it. But that's pretty dang cool and pretty dang quick compared to how we used to have to create things. There's a lot of tools that do this. Many tools. This is not even all of them. I made this a while ago, and I was determined to find the best tool for me. And I exhausted myself. We have Figma Make, we got Lovable, there's a million. The end result that I came to is that just pick whatever works for you, and it's better to just start somewhere versus finding the perfect one. It's like an artist working in crayons versus colored pencils. Just get into it and have fun. For today, we will be talking about Replit. That's what I've personally been using a lot lately. It's different from some of these other tools because it builds the house that your application will live in. Instead of just a picture, it will also create the back end. It can do a lot more complicated things than some of these other tools that give you a flimsy screen and that's it. Okay, speaking of vibe coding and creativity, I also want to touch on all the cool things that you can do with vibe coding. So everyone always thinks that it might have to be some great app, but that's not the case. In fact, I had our last AI event here with some fellow creators, and afterwards I was about to send out a very long email to everyone. And I looked at the text on the page, and I thought, man, I do not want to send that out. No one wants to get a big paragraph. This would be much cooler if I just create a simple page with it. So I used Replit, and I just made a nice little page here. So you can use vibe coding to make emails more fun, or you can also get inspired by the latest technology. When I found out that Replit could sync up with your Google Calendar and with your Spotify, I thought it would be fun to make a Valentine's Day themed app. So this one will send you a hype up song 1 hour before your date. So it's kind of top down or bottom up processing for how you want to think about things creatively. Really, your own creativity is the limit. Okay. Lou, do you have any thoughts about security as it comes to, connecting to our calendars, to Spotify? Is there anything that we should keep in mind before we jump into utilizing these LLMs in Replit?
I guess one of the biggest things would be to make sure you absolutely trust what you're giving it access to. If you're going to give it access to your calendar, make sure that there's some kind of constraint on it, like maybe even revoke that access after a certain point if you need to. There's a specific vulnerability with LLM and vibe coded type applications called excessive agency, where the AI app has perhaps more abilities than it should for certain things. And again, you just want to make sure you sanity check that, what you're giving it access to. If you're giving it access to your calendar, for example, make sure that it doesn't also have access to a whole bunch of other things by default. You want to make sure if you're giving it access to a calendar, it only has access to the calendar and not access to your email and maybe other things as well.
Okay, awesome. So let's jump into the workflow that will lead us towards building our game. So we'll do a really quick LLM-based workflow. This is not something that you can replace real proper strategy with. I like to think of it as more of a McDonald's level workflow. It's accessible to everyone. Is it the best quality? No, but it can be tasty. So let's get into it. Here we go. All right, so I've got a series of quick prompts here that I'm going to pop into Gemini, and I'll share these as well afterwards. These are going to give us some real quick competitive research, some real quick user research, some UI research, and it'll help us put together a little bit more of a plan before we hop into Replit. You do not need to do research if you're just playing around. This is just something that I thought might be valuable to some users who want to go about building in a more strategic way. With this one, it can help to start off with any LLM by telling them what role they should take, and then you can fill in whatever your questions and or data is, and then you finalize it by saying what output you want. So here, you've been doing UX research for 20 years. tell them that I'm building a vintage-style Mortal Kombat game themed for the American TV show The Office. Please identify the 3 most successful competitive and comparative applications in this space. Short answer. I'm always saying short answer. Gives me the longest answer. And then as that is quickly working, and so note, we do have this set to fast. There's thinking mode, which takes a little bit longer, and I do also love deep research with Gemini, but as this is a quick presentation, we'll keep it fast for you all. Based on this, let's get some user research. So I'll say, please analyze the user reviews and commentary for these applications. Provide 3 bullet points for what users enjoy and 3 bullet points regarding their pain points. So I always love looking at reviews of different apps because that will often illuminate some really great user data. Okay, great. So we've got our basic competitive research. We've got some user insights here. Up next, wouldn't you know it, Gemini's been a graphic designer for 20 years. Please consider our competitors and create a quick UI plan to make my application's design market competitive. All right, well that is cooking. You've been designing digital games for 20 years. Consider the UI plan and the needs of our users and give me a breakdown of what my app experience should be. Include opportunities for user delight. Include specific details for each page so Replit can build this for me. Many things to care about while creating an experience. We've got the brand, we've got research. Why should we care about security?
Mostly because the security failures don't fail quietly. They'll break trust and can shut down growth. So you're building an app quickly because you want to get to market quick. Sometimes though with vibe coding, it's me building something faster than understanding what you've built and understanding what the defaults are. So if you can include that as part of your guardrails when you build, be on a better foot than the person who doesn't.
And this came up at one of our cybersecurity events, but if you're trying to sell your app in the future, you might be in trouble if you didn't consider security practices.
Yeah, and it's not just security practices in general. So I test applications for a living. I've tested plenty of 100% human-made applications that have tons of vulnerabilities in them. It's what I do, like I said, it's what I do for a living. You're gonna find vulnerabilities like that in vibe-coded apps as well, but what I became interested in was not so much the stuff that you find, like actual vulnerabilities, but the quiet things that happen under the hood that make the app vulnerable in some way, but they're not directly exploitable. And so I'll talk a little bit about that a little bit further on in the app.
Awesome, thank you.
Somebody has a question. Matt?
If
Yes.
we are making a program like this that syncs with our calendar or sends a simple email, is that something, should we be even considering security with something that simple, or is that not quite the point?
Oh, absolutely. You don't want that thing sending out emails like to random people on your behalf and maybe of questionable content.
For a quick security assessment of a vibe-coded app, could you just prompt, Gemini to do an assessment of it, and then follow on with a red team agent pre-configured? And
You can certainly do that, and some of the AI coding applications, Claude for example, has a security review prompt built in. Like you can just tell it do a security review and it will do it. One of the things to keep in mind though, with AI that, and it's at least at this stage of it, is they still have the ability to hallucinate things. And so the real thing is you want to have a human in the loop for some of the key security decisions. You don't want to explicitly trust it to just the AI.
Human in the loop, ideally loop. All right, so next we're gonna add in, I have some particular instructions that I'm gonna add. So for this game, we're gonna create some flat images. If you guys think about old school animation, it was all based on a series of images that come together to make it look like something's moving or is interacting. So I created a few flat 2D images of Jim and of Dwight. I'll show you all how I made that as well. Create an image. And then I'll say generate a 2D sprite of Jim from The Office in vintage Mortal Kombat pixel art style. He should be against a transparent background, posed in a mid-punch animation frame. So for bare minimum, keeping it light, each of these characters is gonna need 3 modes. They'll be punching, they'll be resting, and they'll be damaged. So I'm not gonna build all of these, but I will just quickly show this workflow. In the meantime, for our master prompt, I did make some system instructions beforehand about how the system should handle these different images, essentially write some JavaScript that will swap out the character elements based on the current state variable. And I'm setting up some basic rules. I want this game to be something that I can play sitting next to a human like Lou with my keyboard. So I set up some basic keys that should mean different things for the characters. Now I have some pre-made sprites that we're gonna use, but you can see how this image was made. It was downloadable, you can reprompt it, you can make logos for your app this way, do anything you like. Okay, finally, we're gonna wrap this all together and pop this bad boy into Replit. I'm just gonna copy pasta that. Here we go. So Replit, you're gonna wanna start in design mode. Replit does also have a great free version as well, so I encourage you all to get started with that. Also, if you're working with Figma, Replit has a cool function where you can link it directly to your Figma file too. Okay, while we are building this, Lou, what is one thing I should do for us to stay safe right now, if I do anything else?
I would say if the application takes any kind of user input at all, it definitely needs a guardrail. One of my mantras when I was a software developer was all user input is evil. And one of my mantras as an offensive security tester is all user input is a chance for me to execute code on your system. So definitely put some guardrails in to make sure that the input is properly sanitized or of what you're expecting. You know, if you're expecting a phone number to be put in, there shouldn't be words and non-numeric characters entered.
True. And we also have a very basic security prompt, which we can start with. Better than nothing. How safe do you feel like this prompt makes us for this app with no security input on scale of 1 to 10?
I mean, it's a pretty good prompt, and it covers a lot of the high-level vulnerabilities that you might see out there.
All right, that's good. I will also say for anyone using Replit, turn on this lightning bolt unless you need some critical thinking from Replit's agent. You will save a lot of money. You can thank me later. And you can queue up stuff, which I appreciate. I'll often end up working on multiple projects within Replit, or I'll be working in Replit, but then I'll toggle back and forth between Figma or something else, because you do kind of end up with these little gap periods of time.
There's a question out there.
Yes.
Novice here, but are you connecting any of this to like GitHub as like a central repository? You know, so if you use multiple tools like Replit or Claude Code or whatever, like you can read and understand what, like, you know, pick up where one tool, you know, ends and the other, you know, you might go to another tool or whatever. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, that's okay. I have not connected this or anything else to GitHub personally, but you can download the code and kind of toss it wherever, which is nice. You can also invite people to be collaborators on this, and so as long as you can kind of pass the code around, you can kind of do anything these days.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell us what the security prompt you asked it was?
Yes, and we'll share this as well. Ensure that the form is hardened against common attacks by implementing the following security measures: input validation and sanitization, use a library like Validator for WTF forms. I think we got this from, you shared some websites that had security measures on it, and I think I might have gotten this prompt by saying, what, based on this, give me some basic security measures I can include in an app.
Yeah, it definitely looks like that.
Lou, how much do you trust this prompt? How much should we trust this prompt if we don't know what we're doing?
So it's better than zero, it's better than nothing, although, and this is also something that is very generic, so some of these types of, the classes of vulnerabilities it's asking to protect against may not even be applicable to this particular app. So this is kind of like a very broad thing. I would suggest if you're doing prompting, you probably want to narrow it down to the type of app that you're building and have it more granular than so wide. But like I said, this is better than zero. You had a question also?
Yeah, Luke, in your experience, are there any vibe coding tools that are more security conscious than others?
So I am doing some research. So this whole interaction that I had with Tori talking about this and leading up to this spawned a radical research prompt for me. And I ended up finding a repository of about 20,000 vibe-coded apps so I could start an analysis across the ecosystem and kind of see. And part of that testing, part of that research is looking at the incidence of vulnerabilities that are found based on the LLM that is used to generate it. But I haven't finished that research yet, so I can't answer the question.
Yeah, that sounds interesting.
It is very cool. We might get a sneak peek of it later. So here, yeah, you see that button, you can convert it to an app, which will give you access to more functionality, but costs a teeny bit more per prompt. You can also publish this and easily connect it to any domain you have or share it with other people. Well, let's see what we got here, okay? Quick to start. Whoa. Oh my gosh. Oh wait, you know what? I did not add my specific images, but these might be better. Whoa. You know what? Let's stick with these images because this is hilarious. But I'll vibe coding tools, you're often not going to get something perfect out, so it is a lot of patience and prompting. It is funny with these tools as well. What you don't provide to them, they'll kind of make up on their own, for better and for worse. So here's a version that I made previously as well. I'm ready. So here we have, I set some keys. Lou's gonna be Jim, and I'll be Dwight. Okay, so A is left, D is right, and S is punch. So it's very simple. Let's see who wins. Yeah, guys, cheer for me to win. Oh! Crash. I'm excited. We also have a mobile version of this made as well that you guys can scan a QR code for at the end of this. And you guys should all play it on your phones. It's 2 players live, so you can find someone else here at home and battle each other. It's really fun and simple. Lou, do you want to talk more about the scanning capabilities that you created?
Yeah, but before I do, I think Matt had a question.
Yes.
Quick question. That's amazing how quickly it builds something like that. So what's the process like to actually hook it up to a website, to put it onto something live? What's that like?
It's very easy. Actually, Matt, you helped me make a video for it. So Matt has
It was my clone.
yeah, Matt makes AI clones of people for those of you who might be trying to create social media content, but you're tired of doing your hair every day, like me. So he made a clone of me, and I gave him directions actually for how you can use Replit and hook up your domain to it. So it's pretty dang easy. We'll share that on our LinkedIn or with our email list too if y'all want to leave us your email tonight. But yeah, it's dang easy, and with anything, you can just Google it and troubleshoot and curse to yourself until it works, and then you're very happy.
Can I ask a follow-up? Because y'all have both very different roles. What's it like? I mean, why is this important that all of us can put together something like this quickly? And both of y'all have years of experience in your roles. Speaking from your expertise, what does this mean for other people who have the same experience you do?
It's kind of an equalizer, I think, because anyone out here who wants to build an app, I mean, now is your time. Y'all can do it. You don't have to study this much. You can study this much and just use a lot of YouTube and Google and really get creative with it. Get weird with it. Make something funny. The stakes are low. You don't have to build some perfect app that's going to make $1 million. You can build 20, and maybe one of them makes your friends laugh, or maybe one makes a few bucks. Who knows? But it's a time for playing around, I think. And also a little bit of time for engineering and design to bleed into each other. It's kind of hilarious now that I'm creating some of my own designs. I'll be kicking myself for weird complicated things that I've made instead of the engineers wanting to kick me. So it makes me a little bit more empathetic.
I was going to say, and from a person who did software development the traditional way years and years ago, it's a force multiplier. So knowing what I know about traditional software development makes it so I can sit down with a tool that, like a vibe coding app, and make something useful much faster than before. So I think it's pretty awesome.
Yes?
Yeah, so obviously this is a very simple version of it. If you were to iterate on that and get more sprites in there, and could you take this to the next step and get something that's really clean and smooth looking and completely by vibe coding, or is that going to break down at some point?
That's a good question. Do you want to answer that from an engineering perspective?
I think for certain, you'll get to a certain point of diminishing returns when you're trying to do it. The more complex it gets, you're going to end up needing a human in the loop to try to iron out some of the rough spots. And I've seen that just in experience, even building some security apps for testing. Once things get sufficiently complex, I have to step away from the AI doing it and start to look at it with my own eyes and experience and try to get things ironed out. Now, I'll still use AI to help smooth out some of those rough spots, but it won't be the same direct prompts. It'll be more focused on this specific issue that I'm working on versus the app as a whole. Yes?
Kind of a general question. I'm not a coder. I play one on TV, but I feel like back in the day when I would do a design, if I got lazy, my file size would get massive. And if I was, worried about file size, I would get nitpicky and great. Is vibe coding gonna be bloated, or is it gonna be lean and is it gonna run through the pipe?
It certainly can be bloated. For example, Tori sent me a code package of the Mortal Kombat clone.
I feel like that's gotta be a pig.
It was 325 megabytes compressed, which there's a lot of stuff in there that's probably binary files that, so it probably spun up a whole bunch of different versions of the images and put those in. There's also potential that because of the way it was built in a more general manner, that there are some things that were added to the project that maybe aren't needed. They could be removed. So I mean, you could certainly, if you were gonna build this for an audience to actually use, you might want to have a secondary pass on it to trim it down and make it so that it's just got, if you get another prompt, only keep the essential stuff in it and get rid of the other stuff.
So it's just like cloud space, you're paying for it, you gotta kind of keep an inventory of that. And then finally, I don't have any cost context in my head for AI today. What I'm using is complementary, and I don't really understand the tokens and how people are paying for this stuff. What would something like this little event right here tonight, what we've created, put a dollar value on that for me?
This one you might be able to make with Replit's free version. I pay $20 a month for Replit, but I definitely was not using it correctly initially and may have spent $100 over that. But now I know. Turn this lightning bolt on, kids. For the love of God, turn it on. I think that was my main mistake.
Turn it off.
What's the difference with it on and off?
Keep it on. So for this tool in particular, this is a fast mode. Otherwise, they'll have their agents use it, and it, I guess, is more computing power, so you're paying for it more. So I'll turn it off if something's really messed up and I kind of need the big dog to come in. But that being said, humans are still important for vibe coding. I was stuck today when making my mobile app, and I did have to turn to one of our in-house engineers for a quick fix. So still appreciate engineers, I will say that.
Is there another question?
I was just gonna say on the cleaning up the code, so that I actually ran into that the other day with vibe coding, and I was using Opus 4.6, Catholic Claude Opus. I pivoted this app that I've been working on, and I said, okay, what can we clean up in this? Like, what is no longer necessary? Let's try to make this as small as possible. And it went through and gave me a whole list of things to delete. I'm doing it a little bit more in a more complex way. So basically, I'm having it write code, and then I'm using VS Code and GitHub Desktop and GitHub and all of this. And so it just gave me a whole list of you can delete this, and then it gave me a list of files to delete. And my app went to a third of its size or a quarter of its size. So as a follow found that like the latest models, and also I used an earlier model and I asked it kind of the same and it didn't respond in the same way. But the latest models is now getting there to that point where it will clean up the code if you ask it to. So just wanted it was an interesting observation that really happened yesterday. So
It's funny, it's almost like if you live with someone, they're like, we'll clean up, but you have to ask us. Like, I don't
solid,
think that.
solid analogy. Yeah.
Okay, do we have any other questions? Yes?
I don't know if you caught this later, but obviously you like Replit, but you have Lovable and Base 44, and I know there's at least for me, and I think there's for others, like there's a FOMO of, I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket. I don't want to go with Replit if Lovable's the best. What made you choose, because I saw you did all those other, what made you choose Replit?
I was getting lost in the sauce. I was getting lost in the FOMO. I was staying on top of the pulse of everything new coming out. And A, it was exhausting, but B, you don't actually have time to learn anything if you're too busy chasing your tail. And then I felt like I was falling behind. So I'm like, look, I gotta pick something, let's get into it. And so Replit does have that backend functionality that the other apps don't have. So that's why I picked Replit. You can just deploy it, it will host it. So for me, that's why I picked it.
Any other questions before we jump into some security aspects?
Security.
Promise there's only like 4 or 5 slides here. So ShipFast don't seem security for vibe coded apps. So who am I? I'm an application security engineer at Blacker in security research. I've been breaking software since 1986, starting on Apple IIe with a whole 128K of RAM, double-decker 5.25-inch floppy disks, and a custom hardware switch to turn on my high-res graphics. Basically, I help organizations spot hidden risks in their software and products before bad guys do. The QR code, I promise it's not Rickroll, it's my LinkedIn connection, because I had people asking, are you sure you're not just gonna Rickroll me or have some other exploit?
Yeah, it's us.
Oh. Are you good?
I was saying I can't test.
Oh. So the vibe coding reality, the computers are going to follow instructions exactly. You know, the prompts that you put in are going to build the app that you want, but if security wasn't part of the plan, then security is probably missing. So we saw that you had security as part of a prompt in there. And so that's a good thing, because there's a lot of times people are going to sit there and they're going to pound out an app, and they're not going to think about security. They're just going to think, I need to build this app. So when I first looked at vibe coding and security, I think there was a lot of doom and gloom out there. There's so many people that are saying, oh, don't use vibe coding because it's inherently not secure. And like I said, I've tested hundreds of applications completely 100% built by humans, and I tell you there are vulnerabilities in a lot of those. So when Tori first gave me her code, I looked at it from traditional role that I usually do. I ran a static code analysis, no findings. I'm like, oh, it's a good app, right? And then I also looked at it through some other measures, like running the application and intercepting the requests and looking deep dive into it from a traditional AppSec perspective. And again, I saw nothing that was wrong. And I'm like, all right, now it's starting to make me feel like when my puppy is quiet for too long, okay? I don't know what's going on, but there's probably something I need to look at, and I'm missing right now. You know, somebody also asked about using the built-in security prompt within a tool itself, and you can certainly use that. Like I said, that may not be the end-all and be-all. So I went down a rabbit hole. I analyzed over 20,000 vibe-coded apps, started to anyway. What I found with the apps is traditional software scanners found plenty of vulnerabilities in those vibe-coded apps. When I looked at Tori's app, for example, with the traditional software scanner, and I didn't find anything, I said there's gotta be something that I'm missing. And the stuff that I ended up missing are things that are design decisions, architecture decisions, things that happen under the hood that aren't talked about, and that maybe when a human is developing it, they just take it for granted that they're gonna do this as part of their development. It's not something they have to be told to do, it's just something that they do. And when the computer is generating it, they're not told to do it, they don't know that they're supposed to do it, so they just don't do it. So I've got a short demo Like one of the things, and I'll talk about it in the demo, that was a finding. In this application, there's a user database. I don't know that there's a use for the user database, but it included one. And in the user database, there's two fields, a username and a password. The password is stored in plain text. Now, if you're in security, you're like, oh, that's a big no-no. We're not storing passwords in plain text. We're going to hash it so that it's not human readable, because if the database gets breached, we don't want everybody's passwords out there. It stinks that their usernames are out there, because that's usually like an email address or something. But if their passwords were also leaked, then that's a huge red flag. The thing is that that's not a security exploitable vulnerability that a traditional code analysis scanner is going to find. You know, it's going to see that there's a database there, but it's not going to necessarily flag and say, well, you're not hashing the password field. But when I dug into it a little bit further, one of the other things I found was it wasn't that it was just putting the password field in plain text. As part of the return of that user object, it returns both the username and the password in plain text. Which means that a developer that's interacting with that and maybe making a call to get that user object, they're getting information that they shouldn't necessarily be getting. It should be restricted. Like if I make a call for the user object to be given to me, it should give me the username, but not the password. And that was interesting because I've seen that in real life with deployed applications. One that I tested a couple of years ago, they had a similar thing, but instead of a password being in plain text, they didn't do that. They had a password reset URL that was associated with the user object. Now the password reset URL should only be known to that user if they say, I forgot my password. The system sends them the reset link. That's the only person that should get that. You don't need an administrator to see that. You don't need anybody else to see that except that user. For whatever reason, there was an oversight in their code that allowed that to be returned, even though it wasn't explicitly called for in the normal usage. But as an attacker of applications, I'm not looking at the normal usage. I'm looking for what I can get away with. So I said, well, let me see if I can return this password reset URL, and it let me. So now all of a sudden, all 96,000 accounts in that system, I could become them. You know, write up the findings, send it to the company, they fix it, everything's good. So it was interesting to see that similar effect here in this live-coded app, you know, that I've seen in human-coded apps. So I'm gonna close this, and I've got a short little demo.
One thing that Lou and I spoke about at some point as well that I found really interesting was when it comes to user experience design, if someone can't remember their password or their username, we always want to provide as much context as possible. Like, hey, you know, whatever, just general context, but that context can be exploited. And so from a security perspective, especially for apps that require security, you should keep your hinting more general.
So I made a quick little tool to try to ferret out some of the things that I started to find in live-coded apps that were not directly exploitable vulnerabilities, but they were things that you should definitely have a human take a look at if these things are found in code. So let's see, run that, and it just ran. So this basically gives a quick high-level overview. It's looking for security smells, basically. You know, these are areas that are definitely worthy of having a human take a look at it and verify if it's an actual issue or if it's just noise. And in this case, it's got 20 findings. There's one positive practice that was called out, and it even included some dependencies that are there. But it also ran super quick. Like I said, you know, the file that you gave me is 325 megabytes. There's a bunch of stuff in there. This is optimized to just look for certain things. So I'm going to bring up the output file. So this kind of gives a quick high-level overview of the application at a glance. It found one critical vulnerability that it says, 15 highs and 4 lows. And then I wrote it too so that with vibe coding in mind, This gives a quick executive summary in plain text, like plain English, so that, because the person who's building this in vibe coding, they may not be a technical person. That's probably the reason they're using vibe coding. They've got an idea, they want to get out there, but they're not, a software developer. So this tells them, in plain text, what the issue is, tells them where the issue is found, what line it's on, in case they get a developer friend over to help them. A quick description and a business impact. And then at the bottom, a prompt that you could use to potentially help fix this type of issue. So it's saying, if we're gonna have a password, always hash passwords with bcrypt or argon 2 before storage, store only the hash, never the plain text. Now that may not be the most complete prompt that is going to give you 100% security, but it's a good starting point, and it's a whole lot better than you were before. So this iteration, if you went back and put that as part of the prompt, the idea is that it shouldn't have this particular finding in the future runs of it. And like I said, the key thing that was interesting about this is that this isn't something that's going to come up in a traditional software scanner. It's not looking for those types of things. So that was where I ended up digging in and trying to find. This was the quiet stuff that my puppy was doing in the backgrounds that I wasn't aware of until I finally found, oh, there you are, and there's the mess that you've made with that, newspaper, that book, whatever it is that you just destroyed. And there's a couple of other things. One thing that was an interesting finding that I saw in a number of applications is some of them decided to include security libraries but didn't activate the security libraries. So they said, hey, I know I need to put this security in there. They put it in there, but they forgot to wire it up. So they did part of what they were supposed to do, but not the full thing. So, and again, these aren't necessarily saying that your app is directly exploitable because of this, because the app runs, and if you get an AppSec person to test the app through static code analysis or dynamic analysis, they're not going to find these things. But they still make the app vulnerable and less secure because of what they represent. So that's kind of where I ended up with it. And like I said, I started down the rabbit hole with those applications, looking for these types of vulnerabilities and coming up with a list of stuff. What I'm interested in from a research perspective is finding the prevalence of these in actual applications. If you are a vibe coder who has an application that you are building now or in the very near future, that you would like to have a human take a look at it from a security perspective with a security lens. But again, I'm not looking for your exploitable vulnerabilities. There are tools out there that do that, and I'm not looking to replace that. What I found interesting was these undiscovered, these hidden things that still make an application vulnerable, but they're not directly exploitable. So if that's you, reach out to me and let's talk. The only thing I'd ask in return is that I could aggregate the anonymous findings of that research when I go to put everything out. I won't say, XYZ company's app had this. I'll just put, these are the findings that I had in different apps. Thank you.
Thank you, Lou. I feel like that tool is so cool. I definitely want to use it. And I don't know, I could see that being something that you can quickly scan after everything you vibe code just to see if it's good or not, and then you can call Lou in to get a human in the loop, or a Lou in the loop, as I will now say. All right, I think that wraps up our portion of the evening. Please hang out and stick around, have some drinks, come say hello. Also, please scan this and beat your neighbor in our beautiful Dunder Mifflin Mortal Kombat game. And thank you again for coming out. Oh, and we'll have everything shared on LinkedIn tomorrow if you want to follow along and build your own game, which I know you all do. Thank you.